Today on Hook, the Kayak Angler's Resource, we talk to Jake Hepner, who is an Eco Fishing Shop pro staffer, a big fan of Crescent kayaks, and does a lot of work with the brand. He is here to announce some big news from Crescent Kayaks. Hey guys, JT, you guys all know him from the Great White North, the Eco Fishing Shop social media guru, and Jake Hepner. Jake, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so a lot of big stuff going on. A lot of brands are doing a lot of moving and shaking, changing things up. We've got several announcements from here and there, but a big one coming from Crescent, and I know you had a lot to do with it. Tell us a little bit about what's going on.
Yeah, so Crescent's rolling out their second specialized fishing kayak, their SF line, which is, if you know, the Shoalie was the Shoalie SF. That stood for specialized fishing. They are rolling out their next line of kayaks in that like lineage in the Smallie SF, which is as it might, show in the name, a smaller kayak, the Smallie. So pretty excited about it. I got a chance to go down to Tennessee, and I was involved in the launch footage and like going through all like the promo work on that. Got to actually paddle it down the river. For a while, I had the record for biggest smallmouth out of the Smallie. It lasted a whole 30 minutes, but I had it.
You got that phone call in the background. That's people probably calling in to find out when we're going to have them. So when is this launch taking place?
So it should be live. I think they're rolling it out on April 10th. They're going to do the full walkthrough over on their channel, and then it'll just be gloves off. All the information will be out there. I know that we've talked about some of it amongst us. I've got a walkthrough ready on my channel. I say walkthrough, but kind of a vlog of the trip, getting to see the Smallie in action, which I'm really excited about because we had a lot of fun in that kayak going down some pretty skinny water for smallmouth, which is something that kayak is really going to excel at.
That's what's interesting too. So you mentioned this is maybe a smaller, more condensed version of the Shoalie. And I know, like, I've seen so much footage from the Shoalie, and it looks like such an awesome kayak. It really kind of sets apart with some of the features compared to, that's what's cool about going from brand to brand and seeing like what sets you apart. But maybe let's just run down some of the features of the Smallie too, because a lot of people might be familiar with the Shoalie and like it. What is the draw for the Smallie?
So I do want to preface that, like, it does perform much differently than the Shoalie. Like, if you look at it from the top down, it does have a lot of the like designs that we liked on the Shoalie, right? Like the rod stagers, just the hole, or the hatch rather, stuff like that. But the hull is different, so it is a much more nimble hull. It's going to have a lot of like play side to side, so it's a very nimble kayak in the sense that it is going to paddle super well. It is one of the fastest paddling kayaks that I've paddled personally at 10'6". But I think what sets it apart, it is a 65-pound package. So finding a motor ready, or like power ready as they like to say it, fishing kayak that's under that 70-pound mark is huge, because 65 pounds is like that's light enough that almost anyone could load this on their own. Like, you're not going to need help loading the Smallie. Now, I know that that 10'6" tends to be like a length too that people really like, and there's a lot of advantages to that, because for one, it makes it easier to travel with it. Like, let's say you're traveling all over the country, you've got an RV, this is going to be a great kayak for those sorts of people, especially with some of the features that are just like crammed into that. The fact that you could get 2 rods in the hull of this kayak, because the Shoalie has the rod stagers inside of it, right? The Smallie took it a step further, and they cut out that hatch. So if you're looking at the Smallie, you open up the hatch, it's cut out. So you can get 2 rods in the rod stagers, but you can also get a battery in there, which is huge. Because if you're doing a river float, or you're just going out to the lake and you don't want to take a bunch of rods, but you want to take those backup rods without really sacrificing space, like, you could put them in the hull, which I love that personally, especially if you're doing like a float trip and you want to take a lot of gear. You take extra rods, you put anything in there. It's pretty cool. And I think that movement towards the open platform style stuff is something that really speaks to me as an angler, because you kind of are able to make it your own.
It's crazy the way the industry's kind of gone lately. You know, everybody's coming out with the bigger boats that, you know, you have to have motors, you have to do whatever. But I think one thing that's kind of snuck in this year is people coming back with some of that 10.6, realizing that a lot of people are looking for more of a throw and go kayak that you still can do the motors and you still can do all that stuff with, but not everybody wants to haul a trailer. Not everybody wants to, you know, use the big bed extenders and that. And the 10.6s, I think, are a spot in the market that kind of got overlooked for a couple of years. And I think now people are starting to really identify with that, but not just coming out with a 10.6 that's just a paddle kayak or just a pedal kayak that you're just going to throw in the water, but something riggable. And it sounds like that this boat is going to really solve a lot of those issues.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big deal too, because like even this past weekend when I went out pulling the trailer that I've got 3 or 4 kayaks on and backing it up and unloading it and unloading it, you take like 30 minutes at a boat launch just sometimes to pack your gear, unload your gear, back the trailer, and, you know, get it off. Sometimes I also find myself kind of wishing like I had more of a throw and go style to where I didn't need the trailer. So yeah, I love the idea. I mean, 65 pounds, like I'm even looking at a Boundary Waters canoe access trip in northern Minnesota where pedal drives aren't even allowed because they're considered mechanical. So like, how do you portage from lake to lake? You know, 65 pounds is something I probably could carry on my own to do that.
Yeah.
So,
And the amount of people that car top these days,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of people who car top who are currently using just the lightest kayak they can find that are looking for something in the fishing realm. You know, they want to be anglers or they are anglers, but it's just too much hassle. And I think, you know, 2 or 3 kayaks have come out. I think this one's going to be a big player this year and next on the guys that are looking to do that. A lot of river folks out there too that just aren't big water guys. But it sounds like this, and I talk about this with the Shoalie all the time, that it's very versatile. I mean, you can make that a big water boat or you can make it a river rig. It'll do whichever. But when you're buying some of these other kayaks from other brands, that, you know, it is what it is. I mean, you can't take it on the river because it's so much bigger, and it depends on the river, of course. But yeah, man, Crescent is always kind of on the front cusp of some of that stuff, and it's exciting to see.
Yeah, it's definitely what I like about it personally is that they know that everybody wants to power their kayaks. They know that. Like even these throw and goes, you have to have the option to put either a bow or stern mounted motor, because you know you can car top a Smallie, right? It's light, put it on top, have your trolling motor in the cab, pull it down, put the trolling motor on, and boom, you're on the water. And we talked about this when we were in Tennessee. I was like, dude, it feels so liberating to just go out with a paddle, because when we went down that river, we had a real short 4-mile float and we paddled the whole way. And this thing paddles like a dream. And that's something that it's kind of a lost art. You know, you think about fishing now, you think, you know, kayak fishing in general, a lot of people aren't paddling. They have their paddle tucked to the side if their motor breaks down or maybe they need to poke off the bank. But a lot of people aren't paddling. So if you're a pure paddling fisherman, this is a great option for that, because it's no frills in the sense that you don't need to have a motor to succeed in this. Like it tracks really well. It goes through current really well. You know, it's got a lot of play. So if you're going in and out of like tight quarters, you can just get around a lot of those obstacles. So, you know, that Boundary Water trip you referenced, this would be a great kayak for that, just because it paddles so easy. It actually blew me away so I got to see like a first prototype version that when we were down at the Bassmaster Kayak Championship, we had one at the Airbnb. We had a little pond there and I was paddling it into the wind. And I was like, man, this is crazy how easy this is just to get from point A to point B. So if you are a paddler, you know, there's something in it for you. But if you want to power it, you know, there's the spot in the back and the spot in the front ready to go that you can power it however you want.
And that's like that's a good point too, because, you know, we don't quite know the price point, and by the time this video is live, we will, obviously. But where we expect it to fall, it kind of sounds like if you could start out at paddle, which is something we always recommend anyways, like have a good paddle, have a life jacket. You could start, if this would be a great place to start at a relatively lower entry cost. Then if you find out that you like it, it sounds like it's built ready to add a motor later on too, which is, you know, That's
And
kind
I
of
mean,
a
it's
big
loaded
deal.
with features, you know,
Yeah.
it's like, it's got a lot of really cool, like there's grooves for your rods to sit on the hatch, like the Shoalie had. There's, you know, adjustable seat. So if you feel like, okay, well, I'm not ready to take this kayak in the high position, you're going to be in some rough waters, you can lower that seat into the low position and it changes the kayak completely. So like if you've ever used the Shoalie, there's a high low position. You know, if you're on flat water and you feel good about it, high position. I always use high personally because I'm taller. But the low position, I tried it in both the Shoalie and the Smallie during this trip. The low position just makes it a completely different kayak. You suddenly have like a real stable, you know, it's not doing that heavy rocking. Your center of gravity is much lower, and I think that was a really cool feature that Crescent came up with, and something that I had kind of overlooked until I tried the Smallie and I tried it in the low position. And I was like, man, this is a really cool responsive kayak that, you know, it's got a lot of features. It's pretty much moldable for every style of angling.
That's what I like about, you know, this kayak and, you know, and a few others kind of in that line is, you know, it identifies with two issues that we see in the shop sometimes. You know, one, not everybody's got 3,000 to 5,000 to throw at a kayak. So if they want to buy this kayak at a price point, and then like JT said, and then build it as they go, that this kayak is the one you can do it with, and it's made for that. It's made to build or not build, whatever you want to do with it, but you have that option. We sell a lot of kayaks that, you know, somebody decides they want to put foot steering, and it's a major ordeal to figure out how to get it all rigged up, because the kayak's really not set up for that. This one is, so you always have that option. The other really cool thing I think that we're starting to see a lot of is, anybody who's a river person knows the biggest pain in the butt about floating rivers is the logistics. You know, you got to drop one vehicle off, you got to drop another vehicle off, you float from one to the other. When you get to the other, then you got to drive back and get your other vehicle. It's a pain in the butt. So we see a lot of people in here that just put a motor on their kayak so they can go throw out in the river, shoot up the river 4 or 5 miles, then float back to their vehicle, and they're done. So it makes it a little bit more of an experience, and it lets the kayak, you know, pay for itself, you know, by being able to do those things to it. I think that's a spot on realization of what the market's looking for.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great kayak for like the Newport NK180 Pro too. Like if you wanted to be like keep it super simple, you get a super light 24-volt battery, and that's what I plan on doing with it personally. And you've got a river machine that's light, you know, it's responsive, it's light. You don't have to think about all these things. And there's nothing wrong with the bigger river kayaks, but like there's something about 2 rods, you know, your tackle box, and you know, it's got the patented storage that they got on the side, so you can put 2 tackle boxes there, and you could literally be on the river in 5 minutes with this setup. And you know, you mentioned the foot steering. One cool thing about this is every single Smallie comes pre-tubed for foot steering.
Yeah.
So what that means is instead of having to drill holes and put the tubes in and then thread the things, like you'll still have to thread your line, but the tubing is already pre-done on this kayak. So when you're ready to put foot steering on it, all you got to do is buy the you know, whatever bracket you want to put on there, the Spectra cord, and thread it through, tie it on, and you're good to go. You don't have to drill any holes or anything like that, which I think is a crazy great value, because how many people have bought a kayak and then been like, yeah, I don't really, you know, I want to do a motor, but I don't want to drill into my kayak because I don't know what to do. And this kind of like solves that problem, because you're not having to thread this tubing anymore, and the tubing is done right as well, right? Like you don't have to worry about that error.
Right. One question I would have for you, Jake, is, so is it bow mount and stern mount motor ready?
Correct. So on this kayak, there is a raised rigid section for a 4-bolt pattern to put a quick release bracket for like an XI3, you know, the new Minn Kota, whatever you want. It's got a spot that you can put a trolling motor on the top. So it's got the adjustable drag strap just like the Shoalie had. You pop those 2 bolts out and you put it on there like that. I actually have one on mine right now because we use my orange Smallie as the guinea pig where we put everything on it. So mine went through the ringer with like literally every mount, and I currently have a quick release bracket on the front of it. So it's got like two rigid little lines there where you can drill your 4-bolt in and have your quick release on there. And it honestly did great with the bow mounted option. I had zero issues with it.
So besides the quick release, for either the bow or the stern, do you need a mount, or is it ready to mount too?
So that's going to be personal preference, but it was designed so that you can put the quick release bracket directly to the kayak without needing to buy a secondary mount.
Great.
Obviously, some people might still want to go that route if you want to like do, you know, like the one objective mount has like a handle, right? Something like that. That's going to be personal preference. But if you want to just keep it simple, you can put that puck for the XI3. I'm just using that as an example. I know they don't make it anymore, but that will go directly on there. That's how mine is right now. You don't need a mount because it's a raised rigid plastic. You'll see what I mean when we, you know, probably showed some pictures at this point, but
right.
It's a rigid plastic that's designed to take the force of having a motor up there.
And the stern mount as well?
Yeah, so it's just a flat area in the back that there's no inserts or anything, so you can decide where you want to put the 4-bolt pattern. I think most people will be fine just going directly to the kayak because it's that reinforced area back there. But if you did want to put a mount back there too, you know, obviously that's an option. But I don't think it's going to be as big of a problem because most people probably aren't going to be putting like an NK300 or an 1103 on a kayak like that. You know, one of those ones with a little bit more torque, just because it's kind of overkill for this style of kayak.
For sure.
You know, it's just like this is supposed to be more of a simple one. So like the NK180 is perfect. You just go directly to the kayak. The hull on this does have a lot of volume. There's a lot of lift, so it rides pretty high in the water. You know, you expect like a throw and go, you're probably thinking like, oh yeah, I'm down in the water. No, you're up. It's got some volume. That's what gives it that secondary stability. So like when you first demo this kayak, it might feel like, oh, this is wobbly, when it's really not. It's just you need that weight to keep the nose down. So like you get your tackle in there, you get that nose down, and it really balances out really well. And when you get used to it, you're like, wow, this is really responsive. And that's what I like about Crescents is that it does still focus on being a good paddling kayak, you know, that has that responsiveness, but you can take a lot of weight with you at the same time, that's like the CK2, for example, CK2 Venture. That is a heavy payload kayak up to 800 pounds. I mean, it is a tandem converted into a single, but it still paddles super well for a 13-foot kayak. And, you know, the Smallie is just the same example. It's a higher payload throw and go that paddles really well. It's kind of like the unicorn, you know?
Yeah. Jake, the one question I have had here several times is, will that have any specialized colors for the Smallie? I know people are asking if it's going to be smallmouth based. A lot of smallmouth guys around here. So any different color options or any changes to the Smallie versus the rest of the lineup?
Yeah, so there's a new color, which I think they are calling Timber. It is orange, brown, like bronze with a little bit of black swirl. That's the one I have. It's a pretty sick color. I'm super excited to show some of the shots we got in that because, I mean, if you've seen the launch trailer, you've probably seen the little teasers of it. That's one of the new colors. I believe it's coming in in the Nor'easter too, which is one of their more popular ones. And then the classic Moss Camo has gotten a little bit of a tweak. You might notice it's got a little bit more of that high visibility green in the midsection of it. And then I believe they're doing Moonrock as well. So those are the 4 colors. And I think there's a new one planned for next year, a new color, which might allude to what Travis was saying.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Jake. And again, Jake will be the guy to ask questions to. He'll have all the firsthand knowledge when this first launches, so I'm sure he'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I've already fallen out of it, so I've gotten the hard part out of the way.
Right. There you go.
Totally my fault, by the way. I was being dumb.
Was that a clip you shared with me? Because if it is,
I don't know if we got it on video, but it was
no.
we were photographing a bowfin, and you know how bowfin are, and we dropped it, and I tried to lunge and grab it, and I fell out the kayak, and like it was maybe like 1.5 foot of water, but it was still really funny.
All right, well, wasn't the kayak's fault.
It was not the kayak's fault.
Okay, good.
You know, sometimes you gotta make sacrifices to make content, and that was one of them.
There you go. Well, hey guys, appreciate you being on, Jake. As JT said, ecofishshop.com. Stop by the shop, see us. We'll be getting these in, I would say, mid-April, and ready to get them on the water, see what they do.